All right, everybody, I'm going to fire out a quick video here on the tools I use to port these. These are all just cheapo Harbor Freight stuff, but they're good enough for what we're doing here. The only thing it's not is this. This is a pretty expensive telescoping gauge. It comes in, I got a set over there of them, that blue thing, little blue thing. There, I don't even know where I got those. A friend of mine gave them to me, I think. So this is not full race prep stuff. This is a powerful street engine. Stuff isn't going to be super perfect. Keep that in mind. It's way better than they come from stock, and it's close enough. So this is an Indy SR head. Let's start with these measurements here. I'll show you how I got them and stuff too. Those measurements are the width of the the width of the push rod pinch area here. So in my like loosest spot, I can feel. Now how I use these is I put them in and out, and I put my finger here, and I can feel them pinch in and out. Really, I mean, you barely move them, and your finger's really sensitive, so you can feel from the wide spot to the taper. They taper up towards the roof, which I try to get most of that out. Some of it you can't, but it's, you know, it's not a huge deal. Now I find the widest point here, which was that. I actually measured that with this. I'll show you that in a minute. And then you can feel these, it's smaller for sure. But the initial measurement I got with this, because it's way more accurate, but it's not easy enough to use in the heat of the moment while working. It's just not. This is like a nice tight, it gives you a good feel, but you can't move it around. It sticks. So it gives you good measurement. That's way different, way different. The inside ones are generally obviously different than the outsides, as you can read by the measurement. But it's hard to use in the heat of the moment. So we get a good measurement with that. Set it over there. After you measure it, and then you measure it with your caliper. I mean, obviously a lot of you people know all this stuff, but this is for people doing this at home. Oh, wrong one. So then for quick back and forth in work, I can feel this with my finger as I work. I change it up, feel it. And this is basically to check taper, or, you know, as the port isn't parallel, right? So that's all well and good, but there's certain constraints you have to work with while you do that. And I'll show you what I do. Mainly the constraint is the push rod machined in area. That's why there's a pinch bulge right there. Because the push rod's on a dash one head for Indy. This isn't there. That's leaned out. You need different offset rockers, but it keeps your port wide open. All right. So the initial extra expense was extra expensive rocker price. So I can use this gauge. Initially, I wanted one a little different shape, but they didn't have it, so I dealt with this one. So obviously, I'm going to tighten that. But you can get this in a spot here that's pretty parallel and pretty good. It's not perfect. It might not be the exact angle, but it gives you a good idea. So you're going to say, well, you got to loosen it up to get it out of there. Well, yeah, correct. Well, see that little mark there? This little Sharpie mark on there. So what I do, you might need help from a friend here. You pinch that. You get a good try to get it at as close to where you're going to be grinding on it as you can. And at that mark, I measure it with my caliper, right? And I'll get whatever number. Take it off. Obviously, it's changed. Put it back until you measure it until it's correct. Lock it down and then check that gap with the caliper. Or, you know, visually, but you check it with the caliper and give you an exact measurement. That's how much thickness you have at the push rod pinch for material. Now, I don't know exactly what you're allowed to grind that, to, but I got below 3/16 on this when I worked, and I'm not comfortable with, 3/16 is pretty strong. I try not to go below that. That's me. I don't know. Maybe people measure that down paper thin and are okay with it. I'm not. So I shoot for just under 3/16 maybe if I need to. So then if you're real close, you got to start working the inside of this wall, right? So that way, obviously, it's going to give the port like a equal parallel width turn. You're just giving more space here. So how we measure that is to take this guy and just, you know, feel where it's getting pinched or whatever. And there's a fair amount of meat here in this section, so you don't really have to worry too much, but I just keep using this to eye it up. And then, you know, as you work, you keep going back and forth to this until you get these pretty much vertically straight. And that's what I do. And that, at least that way, you equalize all these to the biggest one. So, I mean, I got two big ones, and they're almost, you know, equal. Yeah, I can't really, you know, describe it better than that. But you match it to the biggest one. I got 1.108 here. Now, I mean, is that necessary to go down that low? Probably not. But clean this one up, right, until it's parallel. You don't get much pinch. It'll definitely get pinchy up here, but you can get most of that out. There'll be a little bit, but whatever. So you get that equal. The measurement might change, but that doesn't particularly matter. You remeasure it, and then you just start working this one and comparing it. Okay, does this one feel like this one yet? And you keep making sure you don't bump this wheel. You know, keep kind of recheck it. You want just a little bit of drag as you adjust the wheel. Obviously, you try to adjust the biggest part to just be touching. And then you can go back and forth with the feel. A lot of this is a feel of your hand, you know. You gotta feel what you're working with. So that's how I get them parallel and equal to the biggest. Obviously, you might be able to go bigger. You get it as big as you're comfortable with and match them all to that. Otherwise, you'll have one that flows a little bit better than this guy. But your engine's gonna work. It's gonna be easier for this one to work and harder for that one to work. So you're always gonna be fighting your tightest, least restrictive cylinder. However, this pinch point is probably not the biggest restriction in any set of heads, really. Because I've seen some computer modeling and other experiments where people have cut this head, not this head particularly, but a small block Chevy head, which is actually a fairly similar design to this. The Indy being now way more advanced than a 906 Mopar head. But so what they did is, if this was a bandsaw, they slice this guy like right down here, and they measure the flow of this section here, of this pushrod pinch and port area. And in a small block Chevy double hump head, I think they got something like 300 CFM. So I think this was a David Vizard, that older dude. He's been around a long, long time. They got like 300 CFM. And then they measured, I think, let's say this section or something inside, you know, you're talking about the ports under the valve. And they got like, you know, 260. Then they measured the actual chunk here, which would be like the valve seat and throat. And at that point, they got like 220. So the restriction of the head is always under the valve, right? The throat area, really, not so much the bowl. Definitely not this, even though there's a pushrod pinch. But, you know, if you work those, you want to work these too, make sure everything's equal. Equal is kind of more important in this section than massive size, especially for a street motor or anything, you know, 383. In an SR head, like 383 to 500 cubic inches is kind of the sweet spot area they wanted with this head, right? I mean, I'm sure this would still flow up with a 528 or a 540. It'd still be a decent head, but a 572 is probably going to pull on it. You'd want to go up to a -1 if you were looking for serious power. But also, at the same, well, in a different step, but at the same time, probably before I do this step, I'll try to fix the short side radius in this Indy head. And this came, I mentioned it in the other day in the other video I did after I spoke with Dwayne Porter. Let me get my little head flashlight here. So it's not going to be easy to see, of course. It never is. It's super hard to see. But the bottom of the port floor you see right there, the last thing before the valve opening. Some of these Indy SRs have a very abrupt angle there, and that should be rounded off. And the only way to really do that is you need something with a little back cutting ability. So I'll use either the ball or the egg shape, so I can try to cut back with the back side of this. So I'll reach in there and I'll be able to just try to hit the high spot or just in front of the high spot and work at a hair. Now this is like light work. You're not trying to really rip anything out of there. Super. You're just knocking off the high edge. This is what I do because I do all this shit by feel. And then you'll put your finger in there and feel it. This probably isn't how I'll have the head set up when I do that job, but so I just feel in there with my finger and feel a real hard edge. And once I knock that off to a nice radius instead of a shape like this, you kind of just round it off so the air doesn't just ramp off there and tumble. I just use my finger to feel it. One of these, it's cylinder number 4, has a really abrupt edge on there. Almost like I could hold the head with my fingers like I'm rock climbing and carry the head around. And then once I knock that off, it'll have a nice smooth feel, and it feels like I would drop the head if I tried to carry it that way. Now you don't want to just flatten it right out like this. You know, you don't want to go like this. You want to still have the nice radius, just not a ramp and not a boat ramp. You want a radius. That's, you know, that's my guess anyway. That's from what I understand and have learned. So my focus with working on these heads like this is any of my techniques might not be especially great for like super porting drag strip, but if I get, you know, 0.5% of flow for this, you know, 1% of flow for that, 1% of flow for back cutting and radiusing the valve. You know, what else did I do? Did I do any other? Oh, the chamber. You know, I get another percent for that. Well, now I'm up like 4 to 5% of flow. And what is that? I mean, I'm probably aiming, I might be short guessing myself. Who knows? Maybe the work I did sucks, but whatever. I enjoy the work and I'm learning while I do it. And I never had a problem with these though before. Now before I could pull 7,000 RPM easy with a 493. So, and the engine wasn't falling off in power up there. So these heads obviously work. And I'm not doing massive changes like to the short side radius and stuff. So I don't think I'm gonna hurt the head or hurt the flow. So all this should be incrementally building performance. As I said, you know, I'm aiming for maybe 320, 325, 330 is my guess. Dwayne's Porter's heads, he can get 360, but that's up at 800,000 slips cam too. You know, I would, if I could get 320 at 750, you know, now that's really close actually. Or, you know, I don't know, whatever, who cares? It's fun, and this is what I spend my time with. But it's definitely going to be an improvement, so maybe the next video I'll just show quick of freshening the lap on the valves, which is just a quick, simple thing. But all right, this has been long enough. Take it easy.